From their biblical beginnings to many ways they are harvested and dried, we're going to be raising the roof. Get it? On this shriveled episode of What Am I Even Eating? Okay, so raisins are dried grapes, as you probably already knew. But why do we call them raisins? The word raisin is borrowed from the French word for grape. Ooh la la. In French, a raisin is called raisin sec. It means dried grape. The French got their word from the Latin word racemus, which means a bunch of grapes. And did you know that grapes are technically berries? Yep, you can learn all about that, how grapes got their name, and so much more in my History of Grapes video. So be sure to check that out. Grape fossils date back 66 million years, when Earth's continents were one giant supercontinent. And grape cultivation, called viticulture, is nearly as old as civilization itself. It began between 7000 and 4000 BC. Humans probably also encountered raisins during this time, though we really didn't start consuming raisins until we started drinking wine, which first developed around Georgia in 6000 BC. The first records on file for raisins dates back to Egypt and Persia around 2000 BC. Around 1000 BC, raisins grew in popularity around the Mediterranean when Phoenicians started colonial vineyards around Spain and Greece. About the same time, Armenians founded their own vineyards around Persia, basically Turkey, Iran, and Iraq. During this time, Phoenicians and the Armenians both began trading dried fruit. In the coming centuries, the Greeks would begin to consume large quantities of raisins, as would the Romans, because of cultural appropriation and that kind of stuff. Raisins are even mentioned in the Bible. I mean, the last thing you want is low blood sugar when you're stoning or crucifying someone, right? For all their popularity, raisins were never really exported to the rest of Europe. But all that changed around the 11th century, during the Crusades, when trade and transportation routes were improved thanks to multiple and unnecessary religious wars. Those wars created a constant demand for supplies and transportation, allowing the Crusaders to bring them back, raisins that is, from the Holy Land. This increase in trade introduced medieval England to new spices along with these new dried fruits, and the mincemeat pie was born. While mincemeat pies once included meat, today not so much. Franciscan friars attempting to colonize the Pacific coast brought a lot of things to Mexico and future California, such as cultural genocide, smallpox, slavery, Catholicism, and syphilis. But they also brought viticulture, which means grapes, wine, and raisins along with them. In fact, Cali's first winery was built by missionaries in 1779 at Mission San Juan Capistrano. Here's a model I built of that mission in grade school. California people know what I'm talking about. By 1851, Muscat raisins were grown around San Diego and were brought to market, kicking off California's raisin industry. Production eventually migrated up to the San Joaquin Valley for its preferable water situation. There, the grape and raisin industry flourished, attracting immigrants from grape-growing regions around the world, like a bunch of Armenians. I myself am half Armenian, but my grandfather didn't come here for the grapes. It was some pesky genocide thing. Need a snack break? Try reaching for some raisins. They're a decent source of fiber, iron, and calcium. Plus, they're also packed with antioxidants. California produces all US-grown raisins, and they hail from the San Joaquin Valley, about a 60-mile radius from Fresno. Annually, the Golden State grows over 2 billion pounds of fresh grapes devoted to raisin production alone. This turns out to be about 500 million pounds of raisins, a lot of raisins. There's about 145,000 acres and 2,000 growers dedicated to farming this commodity, with many having vines dating back generations. These grapevines can produce raisins for up to 100 years. Comparatively, California farms about 620,000 acres of wine grapes and 130,000 acres of table grapes, a total of 895,000 grape acres when you include our shriveled little friends. And California raisins are a permanent crop, planted in vineyards just like table grapes and just like wine grapes. First cuttings are grafted onto hardier rootstock. They are planted in rows that run from east to west for optimal sun exposure, but a bit more on that later. In a typical season, from December to January, farmers prune and tie up the vines to prepare them for the next growing season. From February to March, vines start their annual growth cycle, first with bud break. Entire regions go from brown and drab to green and vibrant, followed by flowers that come in late April and fruit set just a few weeks after that. By early June, Clusters of grapes are well formed. Veraison begins. That's when the clusters start to change color, and the grapes start to develop their sugars. Harvest begins around August and September once they reach their desired sweetness. And how they are harvested and how the grapes are dried can vary a lot. Some are dried directly in the sun. Some are shade drying from the warm air alone. Then there is tray dried grapes, mechanical drying, and even vine dried. Until the 1990s, nearly all raisin grapes were hand harvested by guest laborers. This is highly skilled labor and not easy either. Farm workers gently hand-picked the grape clusters, laying them on paper trays between the vines to dry, which took up to 3 weeks. Today, this traditional method accounts for somewhere between 30 to 50% of all raisin harvest. Mechanical harvesters began to pop up in the 90s. Grapevines were heightened and drip irrigation was added to increase productivity. These picking devices travel the rows and have little fingers that gently pull the clusters from the vines. The grapes are then transferred onto paper trays and sun-dried, same as the hand-harvested ones. This method also accounts for somewhere between 30 and 50% of what is harvested. A third method, also developed in the 90s, is dried on the vine raisins. These are grown on a trellis system. When the grapes reach maturity, the vines are cut to stop any further growth. The clusters then dry on the vine over a period of 8 weeks. For these, mechanical harvesters also drive under the trellis with fingers pulling off the raisins. This method accounts for about 25% of all raisins harvested. Whether it's people, machines, Terminators doing the work, raisins are eventually transferred to wooden bins. This helps equalize their moisture content. The bins are stacked and covered, warming the raisins, allowing the drier ones to draw moisture from the juicier ones. From there, they are trucked to various packing plants throughout the San Joaquin Valley. For golden raisins, things are a little bit different. Fresh grapes are harvested and taken to a dehydrating facility. There, they are washed, placed on trays, and set into drying tunnels that can reach up to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Before being dried, they are treated with a sulfur dioxide, which, when dried, leaves the fruit a brighter golden color. About 10% of California's raisin crop ends up being golden raisins. Generally, as grapes dry, turning into raisins, their color darkens. For example, many California raisins come from the Thompson seedless grape, which are pale green but turn that iconic purplish brown once dried. Thompson grapes also account for about 1/3 of California's grape acreage, making it our most widely planted variety. In fact, they have been referred to as the three-way grape. Don't make it dirty. Okay, make it dirty. They can be used for table grapes, raisins, and wine. Thompson seedless grapes are the vines that all seedless grapes in California are propagated from. In 1872, Englishman and immigrant William Thompson bought grape cuttings from a nursery in Rochester, New York. They were the Lady de Coverley grape, which originates from somewhere around Turkey or Iran. He grafted those cuttings onto local rootstock, but only one of the cuttings actually survived. Life finds a way and all that shit. Him and his son, George, exhibited the bounty from that surviving vine at the Marysville Fair in 1875. The grapes were thin-skinned, sweet, and, wait for it, seedless. From that sprout, the first seedless raisin grape was developed. Prior to this, farmers almost exclusively grew muscat grapes for raisins. While muscats were oversized and tasty, they were a total pain in the ass to seed and voted off the island pretty much. Depending on the type of grape, raisins can range from golden to black to crimson. 35% of all US grown raisins are consumed as is in those tiny little boxes, you know what I'm talking about, or as bags of raisins. The remaining 65% is processed as a paste for fruit or protein bars, or as a juice for sauces or marinades. And this is how raisins got from Persia to California to you. So how should you store raisins? Raisins should be kept in a cool, dark, and dry place. Once open, transfer them to an airtight container to prevent them from drying out. How long do they last? Well, great question. An unopened bag is still usually good even months after the best by date. Once open, that's a different story. Once open, they will keep for about 6 months or up to a year if you put them in the fridge.